close to the top of the hour, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Neal Barnard to the Convergence. So nice to see you, Dr. Barnard.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you.
Um, Before we get started, let me ask you, will you be sharing your screen?
I'd like to, if I may.
You should be able to, yes. And um, will you be able to take questions near the end? Will you be saving a little bit of time for questions?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay, very good. I think people are anxious to speak with you. Yes, and we're so glad to have you here. Before we get started, I will do a little bit of an introduction, very brief, and if you'd like to add to it, then please do. So if you're comfortable and if you're ready to begin, you just let me know, and I will go ahead with the introduction.
You bet, whenever you're ready.
Okay, very good. Now we're ready for our next speaker at the Climate Healers Vegan Convergence of the Peoples, VCOP 26. My colleague working together with me in the courtroom on cases in Latin America involving the right to conscience for vegans, Dr. Neal Barnard, founder of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, also known famously as the PCRM. I'm honored to welcome Dr. Barnard.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind introduction and the opportunity to speak with you today. I was asked to talk about one of perhaps the biggest motivators for people for making a diet change. And as we all know, diet changes can affect the health of the planet. They can affect the health of the animals with whom we share this planet. They can affect our personal health. And I have to say, having worked with quite a few people over time, I've found that there's self-interest, for whatever reason, is a pretty big driver. And so when people get health benefits, they're inclined to change their diets. So I'd like to talk about our work in that area. So allow me to share my screen, and I'd be happy to take questions at the end, of course. I want to start by talking about the work of Dr. Dean Ornish, which is familiar to many of you, but to some may be new. Dr. Dean Ornish wanted to see if we could not just prevent heart disease, but perhaps even reverse existing heart disease. And the tools he wanted to use were not surgical tools, it wasn't pharmaceutical tools, it was diet changes, along with exercise and an overall healthy lifestyle. He wanted to see if that ugly looking artery at the bottom that's filled with atherosclerotic plaque could look more like that healthy open artery at the top. And so he brought in people who had heart disease and he asked them to do a vegetarian diet. Now, why vegetarian? Well, of course, animal products are where the cholesterol is. Animal products are where most of the saturated fat is. And that saturated fat, that bad fat, is what causes cholesterol levels to rise. He also asked people to take a half-hour walk every day to manage stress and to avoid tobacco. And that was the whole program. He didn't use medications, not even cholesterol-lowering drugs. But after a year, the average person had lost 22 pounds. Their cholesterol and bad cholesterol, or LDL cholesterol, you may be familiar with that term, they had both dropped significantly, which is great. But what made this research trial so famous was everyone had an angiogram, a special X-ray of the heart, at the beginning of the study and 1 year later. And after a year, the arteries were starting to open up so much that you could see a measurable difference in 82% of the participants. No surgery, no drugs. And this is what it looks like. This is the left anterior descending artery of a patient with pretty severe heart disease. It's supposed to be a nice open curve. As you can see, it's all crinkly looking. This individual could not tolerate statins. It could not be stented. And his only treatment was a low-fat vegan diet. And after 32 months, this is the way that artery looked. In other words, if you could see, compare the left and the right, that artery on the right has somehow healed. In other words, disease is not a one-way street. And if we have in our hands the power to turn things around, that is extremely motivating to people. So our research team started to do a series of studies. One was simply to see how about people who didn't have heart disease? if they just wanted to lose some weight, would this kind of diet help them? So we brought in 64 women. They all wanted to lose weight, and they had all done every kind of weight loss diet you can imagine. And half of them went on a low-fat vegan diet. And when I say vegan, I just mean no animal products. By low-fat, I mean that we taught them how to cook without adding oils, without the greasier kinds of foods. And we compared it to a conventional diet that was designed by the National Cholesterol Education Program to lower cholesterol. That was the control group. And we asked them not to exercise, or I should say not to change their exercise patterns, because we wanted to zero in on what diet alone would do. And it was a 14-week trial. So the foods that we encouraged them to think about were fruits and grains and vegetables and legumes. We asked them to take a vitamin B12 supplement, but that was pretty much it. And when the participants saw the kinds of foods that we were encouraging them to eat, they were horrified because they thought, oh my goodness, you're letting me eat pancakes and oatmeal and cantaloupe and toast and pasta. I'm going to gain a lot of weight. They were kind of nervous about it. And at some point in the study, somebody realized there was a lot of other foods that were vegan that we hadn't contemplated, like Twizzlers and so forth. I'm not suggesting this is health food, but it does happen to be vegan. And according to our research rules, I guess it wasn't forbidden. So anyway, the whole diet was just no animal products, keep oils low. After 14 weeks, the average person on the plant-based diet, the vegan diet, had lost about 13 pounds. The average person in the control group lost about 8 pounds. So the vegan diet led to better weight loss. But more importantly, we followed everyone for 2 years. And in the control group, their weight eventually bounced back up. But in the vegan group, it never did. They kept losing weight, and they were skinnier after a year than at the beginning, and skinnier after 2 years than after 1 year. So it seems that if you make a qualitative shift in what you're eating, there's no reason for the weight to come back. Okay, so heart disease seems to be reversible. Weight problems seem to be reversible. NIH gave us a grant back in 2003 to see about type 2 diabetes. We tested a control group using a portion-controlled diet versus a low-fat vegan diet. Let me describe these terms. The portion-controlled diet said cut calories to try to lose weight, keep carbohydrate intake fairly steady, and to limit bad fats like saturated fat or trans fats. Now, we had the intervention group was a low-fat vegan diet. No animal products, minimize oils. We had a third rule, and that was to use foods that don't spike your blood sugar. We're going to call them low glycemic index foods, like beans. They're gentle on your blood sugar compared to something like white bread or sugar itself, which might cause your blood sugar to spike. So those were the only rules. No limits on portions, no limits on carbohydrate, no limits on calories. What happened? We use a test called hemoglobin A1C. And that's a measure of a person's blood sugar control. We want it below 7 if a person has diabetes. The control group did well. They had a drop in A1C of about 0.4, pretty close to 0.4, which is good. However, the vegan group had a drop that was 3 times stronger, 1.2 absolute percentage points, which is huge. And then something else happened. In the course of this remarkable research study, one of the people who joined us was about 35 years old. He came in, he said, I really need help. I've had type 2 diabetes for 4 years. He said, my grandparents had diabetes, and I do not want to go blind. I don't want to have kidney problems. I don't want to end up on dialysis. I don't want to have an amputation. He began the vegan diet. He did great with it, and over the course of a year, he lost about 60 pounds. He stopped his diabetes medicines, or I should say his outside physician stopped his medicines. And his hemoglobin A1C had been 9.5 to start. That's not good, that's high. It dropped to 5.3, which is not in the diabetes range. It's not even in the pre-diabetes range. This is a normal A1C. So this raised the question, is diabetes reversible? Could I tell him he was cured? Now, this was 20 years ago, and at that time, this was extremely controversial. Diabetes was a one-way street. Once you had diabetes, you always had diabetes. And people said that not meaning to be cruel. They said that because they wanted people with diabetes to take the disease seriously. You have to test yourself. You have to take your medicines on schedule and so forth, because otherwise this disease can be very rough. But here was a person who was on no medicines, who clearly had had diabetes, but there wasn't any sign of it anymore. And since that time, we have seen this many, 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 many times with diabetes going away, which I have to say is a wonderful thing to see. And other investigators in other trials have looked at this. This is a forest plot where every line here is a different trial. And if the little black square is to the left of the middle line, of the center line, that means that you're seeing A1C improve. And as you can see in every study, it improves. So it's a predictable event. Now, you might say, well, so why would a low-fat vegan diet help diabetes? You know, you're not talking about sugar and the usual kind of things. Let me take just 60 seconds to talk about insulin, how it works, and where diabetes comes from, because this is really important to where we're going to go from here. Okay, this is a cell in your body. This big purple oval could be a muscle cell. I take a needle, put it in your arm, and I pull out one cell, and there it is. Or maybe it's a liver cell. But this cell has a fuel, glucose. Glucose goes into that cell and it powers it. Glucose is its favorite fuel. Glucose, it's like gasoline for a car. That glucose powers your cell. Okay, the problem is glucose can't get inside. It stays outside. The membrane repels it because the muscle cell is very choosy about when the glucose comes in. So there are little channels that are going to let it come in, and insulin is a hormone made in your pancreas that goes to the surface of the cell like a key, and it opens these channels so that glucose can come inside. Okay, so if you have insulin, and people with type 2 diabetes have insulin, and their pancreas is still making it, and it attaches to the surface of the cell, it opens the little channels, the glucose comes in. What could ever go wrong? Well, what goes wrong is that's my dinner, that's my lunch, that's my breakfast. I'm eating fatty foods, fatty beef, fatty fish, fatty, all kinds of things. Yes, there's fat in all of these things. And if I'm eating a fair amount of fat, that fat goes down the esophagus, gets into the bloodstream, goes inside the cell. Fat builds up inside your cells. The technical term for this is intramyocellular lipid, which simply means intra means inside, myo means muscle, cellular means cellular, lipid means fat. Intramyocellular lipid is fat buildup inside your muscle cells. When that happens, the insulin key still attaches, but it can't work. That intracellular signaling can't make its way through all that fat. So the blood sugar stays outside in the blood. What can I do? Well, what if? What if I go on a vegan diet? How much animal fat is there in my vegan diet? There isn't any, right? So if I'm vegan, there's no animal fat. If I keep oils low, if it's a low-fat vegan diet, there's not much of any kind of fat. The fat starts to dissipate, and as that fat dissipates, the insulin can work again. The insulin resistance is giving away. And now I have insulin sensitivity. So that's why this young man's diabetes went away. He was on a diet that was vegan and low in fat, so the fat came out of his cell. The insulin his body was making started to work again. It was as if the time was going backwards. And anybody with diabetes can put this diet to work and see how far they can go. All right, so where is all that fat coming from? Where's the fat coming from that's getting into the cells? Well, over time, meat intake has gone up. This is starting in 1961, going to 2022. And that curve is not steady or not straight or flat. It's going up. And the big increase is poultry. Yes, there's increases in pork and so forth and in meat overall, but poultry is the big increase. Here in the United States, Americans eat 1 million chickens per hour. All of these things contribute to diabetes. This is a meta-analysis of a very large number of cohorts, and the risk of developing diabetes is increased with unprocessed red meat, processed red meat, and also poultry. Fat from a chicken, fat from any animal, or even vegetable fat, if it gets inside your cells, you're going to have trouble. You're headed toward diabetes, okay? Let's talk about fish. Wild caught or farmed fish consumption is escalating hugely, and fish eaters have more diabetes than vegans, substantially more. And you would say, oh, of course, people choose fatty fish because they think it's healthy, but that fat can pack in the cells just like anything else. So fish is not a health food. Look at the first three bars, just over on the left. In North America, this is cheese consumption. Oops, sorry. Cheese consumption going up year by year by year. Your average American now eats 42 pounds of cheese per year. That's about 70,000 calories worth of cheese. It's 70% fat. It's a big part of the problem too. Nowadays, you will sometimes hear people say things like, well, you don't really have to be vegan. Why don't you go on a Mediterranean diet? It's easier, it's really effective, you'll enjoy it. Well, people like the idea of driving down the coast of Tuscany and imagining they're eating the Mediterranean diet. But our group of killjoys here at the Physicians Committee decided to test a Mediterranean diet and compare it to a low-fat vegan diet. We brought in 62 people. They were all overweight. They wanted to change their diet to lose weight. So we asked half of them to do a Mediterranean diet and the other half to do a vegan diet. Now, the vegan diet is what I described before. No animal products, keep oils low. That's it. A Mediterranean diet is really, although there are many countries around the Mediterranean Sea, this was really a term that Ansel Keys coined, and he was basing it on the diet of southern Italy, really. It emphasizes vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains. There is some meat in a traditional vegetarian diet, some fish, some poultry, a little bit of dairy, and a fair amount of oil, particularly olive oil. And it's been a very popular thing and does have some health benefits. After 16 weeks, we asked everybody to change to the opposite diet. So the Mediterranean group went vegan. The group that had done the vegan diet for 16 weeks now switched to the Mediterranean diet for another 16 weeks. Let me share with you what happened. At the beginning of the study, we asked everyone to jump into their diet, and the people in the Mediterranean group, that's the brown line here, they said, wow, this is a really simple diet. It's very indulgent. I like everything I'm eating. This is great. But I'm really having trouble. I'm not really losing the weight I expected to lose. And the vegan diet, the people on the vegan diet said, well, it took me a little while to get used to it, but I've discovered that a vegan diet does not mean that I have to acquire a taste for folk music. I don't have to wear tie-dyed clothes. A vegan diet is really quite satisfactory. And I'm losing weight like crazy. This is great. After 16 weeks, we asked everyone to stop and take 4 weeks off. Then we asked them to begin the opposite diet. And the group that had done the Mediterranean diet and now started the vegan diet was thrilled to make the switch because the vegan diet took the weight off. The group that had been vegan and now started the Mediterranean diet was the angriest group of research participants we have ever had because they were putting back on the weight they had lost, and we were telling them to reintroduce foods that they had kind of forgotten about. For all that 16 weeks on the vegan diet in the first half of the study, they realized they just didn't care about chicken anymore. They were glad to be rid of dairy products. And now we were telling them that for science reasons, they had to bring those foods back. They weren't too crazy about that idea. They couldn't wait for the study to be over so they could go back to a vegan diet. Okay, if you look at changes in total cholesterol, the Mediterranean diet is really not very effective. The vegan diet is much more effective. And of course, that's obvious because you're not eating any cholesterol on a vegan diet. LDL or bad cholesterol, vegan diet really lowers it. The Mediterranean diet really does not. There was one benefit, though, of the Mediterranean diet, and that had to do with blood pressure. Both diets were effective in lowering blood pressure, but the systolic and diastolic blood pressure changed more in the Mediterranean group. We don't know why, but I suspect It's an effect of the polyphenols that are in the olive oil. Now you can get those same polyphenols by eating an olive. You don't have to have all the grease in the olive oil. And frankly, they're in many other plants too. Now you might say, and some of our participants did say, gee, if I start a vegan diet, is that going to be expensive? We tracked that. And what we found, when we tracked people going into a vegetarian diet, or really a vegan diet, is that their food expenses drop. How can that be? Well, they are spending more on vegetables, more on fruit, more on beans, more on grains, but nothing on meat or dairy products. And they're not buying oils and things like that. And when they go out to eat, the foods that they choose are the cheapest thing on the menu. And so we discovered that it's about $500 per person per year. So if you have a family of four and everybody goes vegan, you're saving about $2,000 per year. All right, let me shift gears. We've talked about the science of it. Our team and many others have shown that a low-fat, plant-based diet, a vegan diet, a diet with no animal products in it, is the optimal approach. And there is never a rationale for putting meat products back in the diet. Now, there are additional changes the person would want to make, like minimizing oils. Some people need to avoid gluten if they're allergic to it and that kind of thing. But when people go to a plant-based diet, it's a very, very, very important and powerful change. But let's talk about politics. Back in 1991, the US government released something called the Food Guide. It was the first pyramid, the Healthy Eating Pyramid or something like that. It was quickly withdrawn because of controversy and re-released as the Food Guide Pyramid in 1992. This was a step up from the previous old four food groups where you were supposed to eat meat and dairy and vegetables and fruits and grains. But the pyramid was not ideal because it had, although it did emphasize vegetables and fruits, which is good, it still had a dairy group and it still had a meat group. And as time went on, the pyramid was controversial and it changed to various other shapes. And at some point, they decided, well, maybe we should add exercise to the pyramid and so forth. In 2009, our team said, wait, people don't eat off a pyramid. They eat off a plate. Let's give people a plate, and why not have it be a healthy plate with fruits and grains and vegetables and legumes? So in 2009, we proposed this to the US government. And I'm sorry to say we didn't hear back from them. Radio silence. So in 2011, we sued the USDA simply to compel response. And I'm happy to tell you they did respond. In 2011, the USDA released something they called My Plate. And My Plate said, you should eat grains and fruits and vegetables. And as a matter of fact, that was exactly what we said. And My Plate looked rather similar to what we had proposed 2 years earlier, but there were two differences. One is we said legumes, they said protein. The good news is protein could be meat, but it could also be beans, or it could be tofu, or it could be nuts, or it did not have to be meat. And there was a dairy group, which I think is more for political purposes, but it could be soy milk. Not perfect, but a step in the right direction. Now, you may have seen earlier this calendar year, the US government released a new diagram. This is the new dietary guidelines for Americans said to eat this. Now, when people saw this smattering of foods across the diagram, wondering what the heck were they supposed to actually eat, some of us wondered if they took their inspiration from somebody dropping their dinner plate, or maybe the grocery store shelves after a hurricane. In any case, this rather confusing diagram that they released, unfortunately, emphasized meat and whole-fat dairy products, as well as some healthy things like fruits and vegetables were in there as well. But we were concerned about the meat and so forth. So we are working with the federal government and sometimes arm wrestling with them to change that pyramid. Stay tuned. We want it to be in sync with evidence, which suggests that the healthiest diet is a plant-based diet. When we're talking about policy changes, it's also important to work with our medical colleagues. This is a group of physicians that worked with us to help the AMA, the American Medical Association, to modify its approach to nutrition. And I'm part of the House of Delegates of the American Medical Association, representing the Medical Society of the District of Columbia. And back in 2017, the AMA came up with a good change. They said in food assistance programs, we need to have vegetarian foods. We need to have non-dairy beverages as part of the choices, soy milk and almond milk and so forth. And then they took a stance about processed meat, that's bacon and sausage, which causes colorectal cancer and contributes to breast cancer. They said we've got to reduce that, maybe even eliminate it. And then they said, how about hospitals? Hospitals should serve healthy foods. Yes, yes. Can you imagine healthy food in a hospital? And they said, including plant-based meals. That's right. The AMA policy says you should make sure that every hospital has available plant-based meals for when the doctor wants to order it and when the patient wants to have it. And then the AMA came up with a policy saying if people think they need meat or they think they need dairy, they don't. These are optional, and the dietary guidelines for Americans should make that clear. This is from 8 years ago. The AMA adopted that policy. Now, my point is, we are gradually making progress. The research base has been made clear. Policies are improving, although it's sometimes 3 steps forward and 1 step back. Our friends at the American Medical Association have been very, very clear that plant-based meals are good. In recent years, there has been a focus away from the harms of meat and dairy and focusing on ultra-processed food. Let's discuss that. Ultra-processed is the term ultra-processed food was popularized by Carlos Monteiro, a Brazilian researcher. He developed a system called the NOVA system. NOVA is simply Portuguese for new. And the whole idea was that there are foods that are unprocessed, like an apple or an orange. You don't do anything with it other than eat it. But there are foods that are ultra-processed in a factory or somewhere else. And his assertion was that those are going to be really unhealthy and they should be avoided. And since that time, there's been a lot of study of what he called ultra-processed foods to see what we thought of it. In 2023, Harvard researchers looked at ultra-processed foods and the risk of type 2 diabetes. And they looked at 3 prospective US cohort studies. You might be familiar with a nurse's health study, for example. A huge group of people where they track what they eat year after year after year, and then you track to see who gets diabetes. Now, let me show you. This is a busy slide, but let me explain it. Every horizontal line is a different food group that they looked at. And the green vertical line is, if the result is right on that green line, that means the food didn't affect your diabetes risk one way or the other. But if the little blue dot is to the right of the line, that means it increased the risk of diabetes. If it's to the left of the line, that means it reduced the risk of diabetes. Okay, all of these are what were deemed by Dr. Monteiro to be ultra-processed foods. These are all ultra-processed foods. His idea was you should avoid them. But look at this. Ultra-processed cereals, like cornflakes, that dot is to the left of the line, is way to the left of the line. Meaning, if you put cornflakes in a bowl and you eat it, it's not going to increase your risk of type 2 diabetes, or at least according to the Harvard studies, it's associated with a strong reduction in the likelihood of getting diabetes. Here are confectionaries, packaged sweet snacks, fruit-based products. By and large, they're associated with reduced risk too. These were what Monteiro called as ultra-processed foods, but they're really not causing any harm. Even if they're sort of sweet foods that are heavily processed. Yogurt, whether it's a dairy-based or soy-based yogurt, plant-based yogurt, also not associated with diabetes risk. Well, which foods did cause diabetes? Well, sodas seem to be associated with diabetes, although the association wasn't huge. But the big association, animal products. Animal-derived ultra-processed foods like bacon, sausage, bologna, ham, they were strongly associated with type 2 diabetes. The point is, Monteiro devised threw all these foods into the wastebasket, said these are all ultra-processed foods. And if you add them all up, you do see that on average, there might be an increased risk. But that does not come from the plant-based options. That comes from the meat options in particular. That's the big driver. So in Europe, the EPIC study, the European Perspective and Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition, made the same kind of comparison. You see the dotted line. If something's on the dotted line, it does not increase or decrease the risk of diabetes. What do we have here? Breads, biscuits, and breakfast cereals. Where's that square? It's to the left of the line. These things are associated with reduced risk of diabetes, just like at Harvard. But wait a minute, animal-based products, they're associated with greatly increased risk. Okay, same pattern, we got it. If you're having the animal products, you're gonna be in trouble. If you're having the plant products, you're not. Plant-based alternatives, that's the veggie burger instead of the meat burger, associated with reduced risk. Okay, savory snacks, also a bad actor. Okay, so the point is that the meat products are the problem. And those people who go around saying, well, I don't eat anything processed, or I tell people not to eat processed foods, they're making a mistake. Because certain processed foods are associated with risk, others are associated with reduced risk. Okay, so what is the most processed food? Any ideas? How about this? I'm going to suggest that eggs or chicken meat are the most processed food. What do I mean by that? What I mean is you take a chicken. Farmers take lots and lots of chickens. They put them into a big steel building because they want eggs out of them. And so in goes feed grain, out come eggs. The chickens are used as food producing machines. If I were to make high fructose corn syrup, I'd start with corn. In my factory, I'd add an enzyme called amylase. And the amylase enzyme breaks up that high fructose corn syrup and releases the sugar. It turns out that chickens make amylase too. It's in their saliva. And if you feed corn to the chicken in the same way as you could put corn into your factory, that chicken swallows that corn, the amylase breaks up the carbohydrate. And as the corn goes along the chicken's digestive tract, what happens is the enzymes break it up, break up the proteins, rearrange them, change the fat content, remove the water, remove all the fiber, and out come eggs at some point. Well, what have I done? Protein is made of amino acids. And if I feed corn to a chicken, that plant protein that made up the corn is rearranged so that the amino acids are now animal-based amino acids. The amino acid sequence is different than it was before. It's not better. In fact, I'm going to show you in a minute, it's not the one we want. The chicken's body also makes this molecule. That's cholesterol. It wasn't in the corn, but now it's in chicken meat, and it's a huge amount in eggs. Also, the corn had some fat in it, corn oil. About 15% of it is saturated fat, the kind that raises cholesterol. So 14% of corn oil is saturated fat. When it goes down the chicken's esophagus and through the chicken's body, and it comes out as chicken meat, say, chicken fat is 30% saturated fat. Okay, so this machine, this walking machine that I'm going to call a chicken, is changing the protein, it's changing the fat, it's removing all of the fiber as well, and creating eggs and creating chicken meat that are more processed than cornflakes or anything else. So when people want to think about what is the most processed food, it's animal products, because the animals' bodies are used as machines to change feed grain into products that are more profitable than selling the feed grains themselves. Okay, the last thing I'd like to talk about is the process of change. We've all known people who want to change their diet, but they're not sure how. And it becomes sort of an awkward process. I want to share with you how we do it here at the Physicians Committee in our research studies, or we have a clinic here, the Barnard Medical Center, where we see people by telemedicine or in person. And many people want to change their diet to tackle their diabetes or reverse it if they can, or to get their blood pressure down, or to lose weight, or whatever the case may be. So what we do is we explain to them that fruits and grains and vegetables and legumes are a healthy diet, plus vitamin B12. But beyond that, we don't really try to talk them into it. We don't use logic. Oh, by the way, vitamin B12, the reason you need it is you need it for healthy blood, healthy nerves. You don't need much. You need 2.4 micrograms. To be practical, if you go to the health food store and you get a supplement that's up to about 500 micrograms, fine. Take that every day. If it's higher than that, like 1,000 micrograms, you can take it maybe every other day. All right. So as I was saying, we don't just try to talk patients into doing a vegan diet. And the reason is logic plays almost no role in human behavior. And you know this is true. All you have to do is look at the headlines and you will see that logic has almost nothing to do with choices human beings make. And you could prove this to yourself by thinking about what you had for breakfast. Did you think to yourself, well, logically, I'd like to have maybe 10 grams of fiber and I'd like to have some beta carotene and da da da. No, we don't think that way. We eat what our culture is eating, what our parents ate, what our friends ate, or I'm going to call it noise, what we saw advertised on television, or what we can afford, or what we're addicted to, or not. It's not based on logic. And when our doctors attempt to use logic to tell a patient how good a vegan diet is, here's what happens. You say, this is the brain, obviously. I'm going to show you the neuroanatomy of attempting to talk a patient into making a diet change. You say to the patient, a vegan diet could reverse your diabetes. It could help your blood vessels to heal. It could help you lose weight so easily. That causes the ideatron in the brain to develop ideas like, maybe I should go vegan. Maybe that would be good for me. Maybe it would make me live longer. But these ideas irritate the famiglia. And the famiglia then triggers the don't do-iterry gland to release endorphins. And the endorphins snuff out the idea. And at that point, the patient says, I don't know about a vegan diet. Where do you get your protein? My point is, logic doesn't get you very far. What we do instead is we push the patients in the deep end. Here's what I mean. People come in, they want to lose weight. They don't want to have diabetes anymore. What we say is, let's do this. Let's take 1 week. Let's check out the possibilities. What would I eat if I was following a plant-based diet? And at the end of that week, we are going to start. Okay, so the patient sits down with our dietitian and their reluctant spouse. And so the patient and the spouse are asked to think about what they're going to have for breakfast. And then lunch and dinner and snacks. So the patient might say, look, I am no gourmet chef. I don't have a lot of time in the morning. I just take some cereal, I pour it into a bowl, and that's all I eat. At which point the dietitian says, okay, fine. What if you use almond milk or soy milk or hemp milk or something that's vegan? Would you like that? And the patient says, I never tried. Well, you got 7 days. Let's go to the store. Let's try a couple of products. I'll get vanilla flavored soy milk. I'll see if I like it. Okay, whatever. Or the patient says, how about oatmeal? I grew up with oatmeal. Is that okay? Absolutely. Top it with some fresh fruit or whatever. Okay, fine. I'll write those two down. And then the patient says, well, what about sausage? I used to have sausage all the time. Well, go to the Safeway. They sell Morningstar Farms vegan sausage. And they sell Light Life Smart Bacon. It's a liberal interpretation of the original, but it's all vegan. If you like it, write it down. If you don't write it down. And you look at all the other choices, products that you could have to make your plant-based breakfasts, okay? And there are many different choices. Okay, I never scrambled tofu before. I wonder if I'd like it. You got 7 days. All right, then on to lunches and dinners. Okay, I'll have a wrap, or I'll have the veggie burger, or I'll have whatever it is. And when I go to my favorite Italian restaurant, I got to have something vegan there too. Well, they'll leave the cheese off my pizza and put on extra sauce and all their veggies. Or they'll give me minestrone, vegan. Or they'll make my angel hair pasta topped with a marinara sauce. Or I want a little spicier. That's the arrabbiata sauce. That's Italian for angry, the spicier tomato sauce. They've got lots of choices. All right, let's go next door to the Latin American restaurant. Oh, easy. They've got bean burritos. They got veggie fajitas, bean tacos, lots of stuff. Chinese, even more. They've got 30 or 40 things on the menu that are rice dishes, vegetable dishes, tofu dishes. They never had meat in them at all. Extra points for Japanese, though, I have to say, because not only do they have many plant-based items, they tend not to use much oil anyway. With edamame miso soup or a cucumber roll or an asparagus roll or a sweet potato roll or the seaweed salads, these are all plant-based. There's no animal products. There's no fish in these things that you're going to choose. They serve all they serve fish and so forth at the restaurants, but you're going to find a bounty of healthful choices that are going to work with you. Okay. If the patient says, well, look, I do fast food about 4 or 5 times a week. I go to Subway. Oh, yeah, they'll make me a veggie sub. I go to Taco Bell. They'll make a bean burrito, hold the cheese. Okay, all right, add the jalapenos, count me in. Okay, a week goes by, the patient comes back. They've got a huge list of foods that are vegan. They like it. All right, the patient says, what next? The dietitian says, eat those foods. Eat those foods. That's it. Eat those foods for the next 3 weeks. Let's go vegan. No animal products at all. Eat the ones that you know that you already like. Okay, the patient says, I'll try it for 3 weeks. That's fine. And so they do a 3-week test drive, and we keep in touch with them every week by Zoom or by phone or something like that, or in a group class, because everyone has some problem. They're invited to a party, or they go to a restaurant where there was nothing to eat. And there are little kind of workarounds, ways to plan to make it really, really simple. And so we problem solve with the patient. Now, as what you'll notice that what we're doing is we're helping a patient to change their lifestyle. We're partnering with them. They are the locus of control, as opposed to what all of our doctors used to do before they started working here, which was the doctor was the locus of control. You've got diabetes. I'm going to write your prescription. You're going to take it. That's not what we do. We're giving the patient the power to take their health into their own hands. And we provide weekly group support. Okay? So this little birdie wants to thank everybody who goes on a plant-based diet, and his friends want to as well. However, I do want to say that the stakes we are playing for are extremely high. And everybody on this call knows it, that the planet is changing and you can feel it. The projections of climate change, if anything, were too modest. The changes are faster than predicted. Diseases, unfortunately, like diabetes and obesity and cardiovascular disease, are roaring ahead, taking victims day by day by day. Who is going to pay for this? The animals certainly pay for it. Our planet certainly pays for it. But let me encourage everyone to think about the next generation. Every time anybody changes to a plant-based diet, these kids would have something to cheer about. It means that there's a planet that's worth living in. And that's what I want to thank all of you for, because you and people who have been participating in this have been pioneers for a long period of time, helping people to learn, helping people to change, and helping people to use their power and use their voice to save this planet that we live in. Thank you for letting me share this time with you. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
We've got lots of questions.
Very good.
I will bring them forward.
Okay, please.
For anyone to ask a question, please come on screen. Toby, Jyoti. There's Toby. Okay. Go ahead, Toby. Oh, I see Danny's here also.
Hello.
Toby, go ahead, and then we'll bring up Danny.
Hello, Dr. Neal Barnard.
Yes, hello,
Thank you very much for your work. And I've got two very quick questions. One for people that I know of, and one for myself. I hear people with type 1 diabetes and pre-diabetics for type 1. And they say that they're on a ketogenic diet and things like that. And I don't know too much about type 1 diabetes. It seems to be quite a trickier subject than type 2. And then I've also got, I just want to hear your thoughts on that, please. And then one on DHA and EPA. And I hear people like Dr. Joel Furman and Dr. Michael Clapper who talk about issues with that as well when you get older. So please may I have your thoughts on DHA and EPA as well?
All right. Well, Toby, thank you. Those are two great questions. First of all, let's talk about type 1 diabetes. The form of diabetes that I was describing in the trial that NIH gave us a grant to do was type 2. That's maybe 90% of diabetes is type 2. And what that means is the insulin is still being produced in the pancreas. It's still in the bloodstream. And the problem is insulin resistant, where the cells are filled with fat. Type 1 diabetes means the pancreas has changed. The insulin producing cells have been killed off. And so there's no insulin in the body anymore. So that person needs to inject insulin. And the insulin then goes to the surface of the cell, just like in type 2, and it tries to make the cell accept glucose. So the difference is in type 2, the cells are making, the cells of the pancreas are making insulin. In type 1, they're not anymore. Diet plays huge roles in both forms, but let's talk about type 1 for a moment. First of all, the question is, what caused type 1 diabetes? It's an autoimmune reaction. Somehow, in most cases, somehow antibodies, little proteins, have formed that have destroyed those cells. Why would that be? We don't know exactly, but the immune system is there to recognize viruses that come into our body, or bacteria that come into our body, or other foreign things that come into our body. And an autoimmune reaction means that your immune system has been tricked. Some protein came into your body that your body thought was a virus. And so it made all of these antibodies, these protein torpedoes, to try to kill that virus. But instead, those protein molecules hurt you. They hurt the body with autoimmune disease. Back in 1992, I believe it was, the New England Journal of Medicine published an amazing article suggesting that that protein triggering the autoimmune reaction might be dairy protein, a protein from cow's milk. And if you think about it, cow's milk proteins would be something that humans would never encounter. During all of our evolution on Earth, we would never consume the protein from a cow until people figured out how to make cows stand still, and they then would milk them and take the milk that up until then had only gone into the calf. So that was 10,000 years ago or something like that, and actually only in the last couple of generations in some parts of the world where people are now getting dairy. The reason I'm telling you this is we now think that food might be the cause of some cases of type 1 diabetes. More research is needed in this area, but for my money, there's no reason to expose children to animal proteins at all. Okay, but now what if a person has type 1 diabetes, which maybe your friends might have? They still need to inject insulin, but we did a randomized trial where we tried a low-fat vegan diet in people with type 1 diabetes. And what we showed is just like type 2 diabetes, the fat starts coming out of their cells. Their insulin that they're injecting is able to work much more efficiently. And the average person had a 28% reduction in their insulin doses in the course of this trial. So they weren't going low carb. They weren't saying no to spaghetti. Oh, I can't eat a bean. I don't dare eat fruit. They could eat all the fruit they wanted. We didn't even make them count calories or anything like that. It was the easiest thing ever. And their bodies became much, much more insulin sensitive. Don't get me wrong. They were terrified beginning this because they thought, oh, you're going to make me eat all these carbs. You're telling me I can eat pancakes. I can't do all this. I can't have a bowl of oatmeal. But they did. And they felt fantastic with this result. But I want to tell you something. The most important thing, what kills a person with type 1 or type 2 diabetes is not a high blood sugar or a low blood sugar in the vast majority of cases. What kills them is cardiovascular disease, heart disease. You want to baby those arteries. You don't want a drop of cholesterol or animal fat in your diet because your heart and your kidneys depend on clean blood. So we use a low-fat vegan diet for everybody, type 1 or type 2. Okay, hope that's clear. Regarding EPA and DHA, just really quickly, these are long-chain fatty acids that your brain uses. Your body doesn't make them. Your body takes a shorter fatty acid called ALA, or alpha-linolenic acid, and extends it from 18 carbons to 20 to 22 and so forth. your body can do it. It can make EPA, it makes DHA. But people say it's really slow. It's taking forever. And if you eat a lot of other fats, it competes with those enzymes. And some research has suggested that people who are low in DHA and EPA have a higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. So that led everybody to go and supplement, not with fish oil, but you can get vegan omega-3. You can get the vegan DHA and EPA. Okay. And so for some people, that's as far as it goes. But there was a new study that came out looking at individuals supplementing with flaxseed. Flaxseed doesn't have EPA or DHA. It's got a lot of ALA. But they found that the people who were really low in DHA and EPA, if you just gave them flaxseed, they could extend it to the longer chain fatty acids pretty vigorously and make more DHA and EPA from the flaxseed alone. Some people say you should not take EPA or DHA because there is some suggestion that it might be linked to prostate cancer. We don't know the answer to that. There is some evidence that it's good for the brain, other evidence that it is harmful to the brain, and I have to confess, I don't know which is true. But I will say this. We do know that plants are good for you. We know that flaxseed is good for you. If you want to measure to see if you're low in DHA, you can do that really easily. There's a company, there may be more than one, but there's one called Omega Quant, as in Omega Quantify, Omega Quant. You'll see them on the internet. You pay them $50 or something like that. They'll send you a little card. You put a drop of blood on it, and they'll tell you what your DHA and EPA level is. And there you have it. So, Toby, thank you for those questions. Forgive me for this long-winded answer, but I hope that was helpful.
Thank you very much. Emery, BJ, can I bring you up? You should be able to unmute. There you are.
There, I got it. Hello there. There, my face caught up with my words. I was just going to say, I was so thrilled with the processed cereal being okay, because that's just like one of my things that I have eaten like twice a day for my entire life, and I it's like it's like it made me so happy. I only eat the vegan version, so it's totally vegan, but I do have a question, and I wondered if either this talk that you just gave or something very, very similar is available, because I felt like my my husband and my daughter would really benefit from hearing it. That my daughter has so many of these little questions, and that you answered in this, and and the things that she's mixed up on. So, is there something that's out there that's very similar to this talk that you're speaking? I want you to be the one speaking.
Well, thank you very much for asking, and thank you for thinking of your family members. You're so right, that your family members have questions. Let me mention maybe a few resources that you might want to think about.
Okay.
The first is I also write books that have a lot of what we've covered in them, and my most recent one is called The Power Foods Diet. And it's one your family members would actually like, because it tells them about foods that are really good for them, and it has lots of really pretty pictures and good
That's
recipes,
great.
good recipes that are simple and actually work out in the kitchen. So the Power Foods Diet, although it focuses on weight loss, it also it's just generally good and healthy in general. The book before that is called Your Body in Balance, and it's about hormonal conditions. So menstrual cramps or menopausal symptoms or diet-related cancers like prostate cancer or breast cancer and those kinds of things. It's all about how foods can affect hormones. For diabetes, I did write a book called Dr. Neal Barnard's Program for Reversing Diabetes that's been very popular. But if you wish, you might want to look on, if you go on YouTube and you put in my name, Neal Barnard, and TEDx, TEDx, you might know the TED Talks. They're 18-minute talks that you can tolerate. And I have one on diabetes and one on brain health that are short and have had millions of views. We also have a program called The Exam Room. It's a podcast that Chuck Carroll hosts, and I'm a frequent guest on, and people seem to benefit from that as well. And if you're in the US, at noon every Tuesday Eastern Time, we have something called um, the National Diabetes Program, which is diabetes experts providing support for anybody who's got that as an issue and just wants to join for free. So you go to our website, pcrm.org,
Mhm.
type in National Diabetes Program, and you'll see the link, and it's real easy. So those are a few resources. And if you go on YouTube and you just put in my name, you'll see lots and lots and lots of videos.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Let me also mention if anybody would like to come to Washington, D.C. during when it's most sweltering, August 13th, 14th, and 15th here in Washington, we'll have the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. It's jointly sponsored by the Physicians Committee and George Washington University, where I'm on faculty. It's 3 days. I'm the MC, and it's fun. It's all vegan food and it's really cool. There'll be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there. So it's here in Washington, the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. Come if you can. I'd love to see you.
That would be awesome. Maybe you can put that in the chat after we're finished here. We do have some more questions. I'd like to bring up Dr. Gavada. Dr. Gavada, are you able to unmute?
Thank.
There you are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnard. Excellent presentation, and I've heard you for the first time. I'm sorry, didn't hear you earlier, but I had two questions. One is what got you into this direction of practice? In other words, using, vegan food and everything initially. I mean, because there are so many doctors around the world, but not too many are in this path. The second question is, you have a lot of patients that you have suggested, vegan diet for a week and 3 weeks. And I wanted to see how many of those people actually continued on a vegan diet later. Do you have any statistics on that? And thank you for doing this. I hope more doctors, if say 90% of all doctors did what you're doing, we would have a vegan world. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for saying that. Back a number of years ago, a diabetes foundation came to talk with me because they wanted to find an alternative to using animals in experiments. People were asking them to give them money for rat experiments and mouse experiments, and they felt that they weren't getting very much for their grant money. So they came to me and said, "What would I advise?" And I said, "If I were you, I would do diabetes research using human beings, which we can do ethically. And I would focus on food because that has to be the driver of it." And so I let them know what I thought they ought to be doing. And they said, "Okay, well, how about if you start this research?" And which I was kind of a new idea. So we started getting involved in designing clinical trials. And the first ones were small, but then they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we studied a great many conditions. My own personal background is quite different. I grew up in North Dakota in the middle of cattle country, and we did all kinds of things that I regret now, but it's never too late to change. Regarding the question of continuity, when if a person goes on a typical diet or a fad type diet and they cut calories and they're going to eat 800 calories a day and starve the weight off, it's unsustainable, and they have to eventually bounce back to the way they were eating before. And if a person is avoiding carbs and so forth, it's after a while you think, wait a minute, can't I have a piece of fruit once in a while? Can I really not have a serving of chickpeas? And it becomes unsustainable for many people as well. With a plant-based diet, with a little bit of support, people discover that they can do it, and the benefits that they experience are such that you want to stick with it. You don't want to give it up. It's sort of like a smoker. When a smoker has finally quit, they think, you couldn't pay me to go back. Now, that said, in medicine, if we're counseling people to quit smoking or quit drinking or quit using drugs or change their diets, there is some recidivism sometimes. A person goofs up and they say, "Oh, doc, you won't believe, what I we don't wag our finger at them. We welcome them back and say, this happens. You know, the modern world that we live in, with restaurateurs trying to lure you into heaven knows what. And sometimes our family members are not so helpful either. People can goof up. So we plan ahead, we help people out, and we don't make blame or guilt or shame. We don't even know those words. Our word is just, let's put these tools to work. And if you goofed up, come on back in. We're doing a study now with a major insurance company, which is a longer than 2-year trial. And we find that the people come into it, they love it. They just love it. They're losing weight, they're feeling better, they're coming off their medicines. So people do really well with it.
Thank you so
Anyway,
much.
thank you for your kind questions.
Thank you. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, we're approaching the top of the hour, I was saying.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Danny, I don't know if you have a short question,
Yeah, I
something
do
that
have
we
a
can
kind of
address.
short question.
Yes.
I've been
Yeah.
vegan for several years and I struggle with my weight, but I'm also going through some kind of chemical imbalance. I've been to a naturopath. I was low on neurotransmitters. My A1C was elevated, and a lot of this has to do around emotional stuff that I'm going through, mental, emotional. And I just wondered what's a good way to like test for metabolism? And could some of the weight that I've gained be related to like emotional protection or baggage?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, thank you for your question. Just really, really quick. We have a clinic here that called the Barnard Medical Center. And we tackle these questions all the time. About half the people see us by telemedicine, the other half come in live and in person. And the first of all, if people aren't vegan, we help them to get vegan. If they're vegan but they're eating oily foods, for 90% of the time when people have trouble losing weight, it's because there's nuts, there's seeds, there's avocado toast, and all these foods, while nuts and avocados aren't inherently unhealthy, they never read the owner's manual about how low in fat plants are supposed to be. So they're packing a lot more fat in, and fat has a lot of calories in it. So we pull those out of the diet, people do better. However, we've started doing a new program on emotional eating because we found that there are times where when you're eating, when you're not physically hungry, you're hungry in another way. And it's important to be able to understand that and to deal with that too. And so these programs, you'll see them advertised. You're free to join or whatever. But emotional eating is something that does not affect everybody, but it affects a lot of people. And it's rewarded by the products that once upon a time were not available at stores. Nowadays, there's a 7-Eleven around every corner. There's a convenience store open at night. There's a drive-through waiting for you, and if you turn on the TV, they call your name. So we are being triggered all the time, and this is normal. There is no shame, there is no guilt, there's no blame. It's just, this is what happens. This is the biology of it. Come on into the family. Let's figure it out. Let's conquer it together, because once you get on a better path, it feels really great.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Nice to hear your question. I'm sure other people have the same.
Thank you.
I anticipated that this would happen, that we'd have more questions than we had time for, but is there anything you would like to say before we close out this segment, or something you'd like to put in the chat? Our teammates have put some items in the chat there to put people in contact with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, but is there something else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's enough. The Physicians Committee's main website is PCRM.org. And you'll see information there about our conference, the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. You'll hear about the Barnard Medical Center and other things that we have to offer. And if you're ever in Washington, come by and see us.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful. And thank you for being part of our Poly Solution. And we'll
Right
look
back
forward
at
to
you.
seeing you again soon. Okay.
Right back at you. Thank you for all that you've done.
Very good. Thank you so much.
The earth is calling soft and clear, not with judgment, not through fear. She whispers through the wind and trees, remember who you're divided souls, but living parts of greater wholes. Every heart, every nation holds a piece of worldwide resolution. We have remedies beyond survival, beyond the stories of denial. 1,000 pathways join as one. The healing has already begun. We have the remedy for compassion revolution, peaceful collaboration, a worldwide resolution. Loving guidance lights the way. Hope for humanity begins today. With loving kindness, hand in hand, together we restore the land. True nature lives in every seed, in every generous word and deed. The rivers, forests, skies and seas reflect the peace we choose to breathe. Spiritual embodiment, a living sacred testament, not escaping from this earth, but honoring her endless worth. Sacred restoration, hearing every generation. The birthright to existing in freedom, shared by every life beneath the sun. Beyond our borders, beyond our names, love burns brighter than our blame. From every culture, every shore, we discover what we're living